Part 2 in our series of how regional players view this upcoming summit, we take a look at Japan today. Having mentioned strong sanctions and maintained strong sanctions on the regime and having no diplomatic or economic relations whatsoever with Pyongyang, there's been claims that Japan is being left out of the recent developments on the Korean Peninsula. Our Kim Min-ji reports from Tokyo.
Japan, within range of North Korea's short to mid-range missiles, has been maintaining a hardline stance towards Pyongyang. No trade, no personal exchanges, and that has put Tokyo out of the picture. There have been reports that Japan is being sidelined in the recent diplomatic developments regarding North Korea. But the country is stepping up efforts of its own, with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visiting the U.S. And there's also speculation that a Tokyo-Pyongyang summit may be in the works. Tokyo has brushed off concerns of so-called Japan passing, saying the idea that the country is being left out is not true. Prime Minister Abe has stressed that close communication is taking place between the key players, and that Tokyo's approach towards North Korea is closely coordinated with other regional powers. In the U.S., Abe got assurance from President Donald Trump that any deal regarding the North abandoning its missiles should not just cover ICBMs, but also short to mid-range missiles that can reach Japan.
We could say pressure on the regime has brought it to talks, and Japan has been at the forefront there. But when it comes to the talks themselves, as Japan is not part of them, we do need to get information from the parties that are involved, as the issue affects our security interests. At this point, President Trump needs to take the lead, and Japan will likely support whatever the U.S. decides to do. Even though the talks are scheduled, we will probably maintain maximum pressure.
In fact, Japan has been calling on both South Korea and the U.S. not to lift sanctions despite the recent sense of optimism. Given North Korea's past behavior, there are voices in Japan warning that there needs to be a clear definition of what constitutes denuclearization for concrete outcomes to be achieved.
There have been many great agreements and treaties in the past. None of the promises were kept. If some sort of compromise is reached this time, there needs to be a system that oversees whether the agreement is being abided by. For instance, we could set the time frame by which goals have to be achieved.
Further down the road, experts say Japan will have its cards to play, because in exchange for denuclearization, the regime will likely have its own demands, and meeting those demands will require concerted efforts.
Ensuring the security of the North Korean regime is not something the U.S. can do alone. This is where South Korea and Japan come in to promote the North economic cooperation. What Pyongyang will want down the line is the normalization of relations, which will lead to economic support.
On top of that, Japan still has outstanding issues with North Korea, such as the abduction of its citizens, which has raised the possibility of a bilateral summit in the near future. But experts say that will depend on whether there are sincere, visible efforts by North Korea towards denuclearization. Tokyo also needs to believe that talks with Pyongyang would yield positive outcomes, especially at a time when the Japanese Prime Minister is mired in scandal.
If the Prime Minister met with the Kim Jong-un and nothing comes out of the meeting regarding abduction, I'm not entirely sure how the Japanese public would react to that.
Many Japanese experts on North Korea say this could very well be the last opportunity to deal with denuclearization. While on one hand it's an issue that needs to be settled by the U.S. and North Korea, they say neighboring countries like South Korea and Japan will also have to well play the role of advisors to bring about positive and sustainable developments on the way. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News, Tokyo.